I'm Eddie Muller. Thanks for joining me in Noir Alley. Today, I've got a terrific caper for you from producer Eddie Small via United Artists. It's the 1952 release, Kansas City Confidential. Now, heist stories are perhaps the most durable subset of the crime genre, and Kansas City Confidential, while fitting the mold, is something distinctive. The heist happens early on. The story unfolds almost entirely in the crime's aftermath, different than most movies involving a high-stakes heist. The hook is that the crooks who commit the daring robbery don't know who their cohorts are. The mastermind has arranged for everyone to wear masks, hiding their identities. That way nobody can pull a double-cross. The plan also calls for a fall guy, so the perps have time to escape. The sap is played by John Payne in classic noir fashion, a bitter World War II vet and paroled jailbird trying to keep his nose clean as a driver for a Kansas City florist.
All right, Ralph, you want it the hard way. I can fix that, too. You've got 20 years staring you right in the face.
What do you want me to say, that I did it?
After getting worked over by the cops, Payne takes matters into his own hands, tracking down the guys who framed him. They reunite months later at a Mexican fishing resort to divvy the loot. Unmasked, no one's sure who's who, or who can be trusted. The big boss could be any one of the vacationing fishermen. It's a great setup for a suspenseful and amusing game of cats and mouse, as Payne infiltrates the setup and the gangsters suffer one big identity crisis. Now, credit this unique premise to Roland Brown. He's a legendary, if little-known figure from the early days of talking pictures. As a writer, Brown was especially adept with crime pictures, since he reputedly moved, easily and often, in underworld circles. The three pre-code movies he wrote and directed, Quick Millions, Hell's Highway, and Blood Money, made in a splurge of creativity between 1931 and 33, are unique for their time, featuring a laissez-faire attitude toward crime and a brazen, if elliptical, style of storytelling that now seems years ahead of its time. Brown was also a feisty contrarian who brooked no interference in his creative endeavors. Legend has it he was blackballed after punching out a producer during the making of 1936's The Devil is a Sissy, which Brown never finished directing. Did I mention that he'd sparred with Jack Dempsey? You can see why studio execs feared him. But they loved his ideas. And whenever Brown needed some walking around money, he'd pop up to pitch a movie deal. Among them, Angels with Dirty Faces, Johnny Apollo, Nocturne, and this film, which has the sort of clever and off-kilter approach to crime found in Brown's pre-code movies. In Brown's film, the savvy and style of the crooked characters more than the plots is what made them memorable, which is true of all the best capers. Now, the Kansas City Confidential gang fits right in. These guys are motley enough to earn a special place in Noir Alley's Den of Iniquity. There's skittish Pete Harris, played by Jack Elam, who strolled into the movie business after managing the Bel Air Hotel in Beverly Hills. Elam lost sight in his left eye after a childhood dust-up, and the resulting wall-eyed stare gave his silly-putty mug a uniqueness that kept him employed for decades.
Who else figures in it besides me?
You ask too many questions.
And I'm not getting any answers. I'd like to know who I work with, when we make a split, and who I take my orders from.
Get out of here.
Then there's chunky, thuggish Boyd Kane, played by Neville Brand, who has a face that makes Charles Bronson look like Cary Grant. Brand reached the heights of his popularity playing Al Capone on the series The Untouchables. In reality, the actor was as far from a callow crook as you could get. He was the fourth most decorated soldier of World War II. Now, Tony, the sleekest of this sleazy crew, is played by Lee Van Cleef, the reedy, beak-nosed former accountant knocked around Hollywood as a henchman and saddle tramp for 15 years before Sergio Leone made him an international star, casting him alongside fellow squinter Clint Eastwood in For a Few Dollars More and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Van Cleef was the bad. Director Phil Carlson was in stride with Kansas City Confidential, having just made the sensational Scandal Sheet at Columbia, also for producer Eddie Small. Carlson, like his compatriot Anthony Mann, had grinded out Poverty Row programmers in the 40s before finding his niche with violent, sometimes brutal crime pictures. He had a profitable association with John Payne, making two other punchy noirs, 99 River Street and Hell's Island, movies that transformed Payne from a musical comedy performer into a lonesome noir nighthawk. From a final script by George Bruce and Harry Essex, and co-starring Preston Foster and Colleen Gray, here is Kansas City Confidential.